Hi Hotties, welcome back to Hoops for Hotties, where I explain all of the latest sports news in a way the girls, the gays, the theys, and the straight men who don't admit they don't know anything about sports can actually understand. And today we're going to be going over all of the top trending topics in the sports world. I'm going to explain them to you, give my thoughts, and we're just going to have a little kiki, me and you. First things first, we are going to be talking about the college football playoffs. Now, I did an explanation of how this works on my TikTok because I want the girlies to understand because college football is so much fun. And first things first, I want to explain why it's such a big deal. Now, people consider college sports as a part of their identity. Like, while I may never be an Atlanta Hawk, okay, I was a Georgia Bulldog. Like, people dream about going to these schools and like it's a part of people's generational family trauma and shit. Like people grew up with their grandfather having gone to Georgia and then their father having gone to Georgia and then they were put in a Georgia Bulldogs onesie when they were just a baby. And then that is a part of their identity, getting into that school, being a part of that Georgia Bulldogs family. So people take it very seriously. A lot of people put money into these schools. Like it's a huge deal and everybody feels like they're a part of it. When their team loses, they lose in a way that professional sports doesn't really have. Like I'll never actually be a part of those organizations, but I was a part of my college. So I explained how the playoffs work in my TikTok. I'm going to insert that video here so you guys can hear about how the playoffs work so that you're not confused. Ladies, the college football playoffs are about to start and you don't know what the hell is going on. Don't worry, by the end of this video, you're going to be a pro. I'm Mariah and I'm going to teach you about college football in a way the girls, the gays, the theys, and the straight men who don't admit they don't know anything about college football can actually understand. It's quite simple actually. The college football playoffs are just the Met Gala for college boys. Only the best teams get invited and it's not just based on how good you are. Let me explain. So this is who makes the list. Now it used to be a lot more exclusive. Before this year, only 4 teams got invited, but they extended the list to 12 teams because a lot of people who deserve to walk the red carpet didn't get the opportunity to. Now, this is who gets invited. There are 5 VIPs and then 7 wild cards. Let's start with the VIPs. So you got your Rihannas, your Zendayas, your essentials. The Met Gala wouldn't be the same without them because they've earned their spot. That is the 5 conference champions. Don't get confused. I'll explain in a minute. Then you've got your wild cards. That's your influencers, your Kardashians. The other 7 invitees are your wild cards. These are your influencers, your Kardashians, the people that it might be a little controversial that they got invited, but the committee chose them. Now, who's who? Every single team in NCAA Division I football, the FBS, a little vocab for you. So yeah, everyone in Hollywood could technically get invited to the Met Gala, but you've got your Power 5 conferences, the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big 12. These are your A-list celebrities, your actors, your singers, your supermodels, and they have to win their conference in order to get automatically invited. So think your singers win a Grammy, they automatically get invited. Your actors win an Oscar, they automatically get invited. Your supermodel gets the cover of the September issue of Vogue, she automatically gets invited. However, this does not mean that the girl who did walk the Victoria's Secret fashion show but didn't get the September issue cover doesn't get invited. So your Grammy winners, your Oscar winners, your Rihannas and Zendayas are already invited automatically, but then the committee, also known as Anna Wintour, has to send out the other 7 invitations. Now, before they decide to invite you, they're looking at your overall record. Did you win a lot of games? Your strength of schedule? You won a lot of games, but were they against good teams? When they have to decide between 2 schools, they look at head-to-head results. So if the 2 teams played against each other, who won? If the 2 teams played against the same team, who beat them and who lost? Kind of like who wore better, like you both wore the shark boots, but who styled it better? Now they want to make the carpet diverse. They can't just invite A-listers. They have to go into these smaller conferences. Maybe you didn't win a Grammy or an Oscar, but you're a no-name who got a really big part in a really big film. It's really important to win your conference because if you're one of these smaller schools and you win your conference, they might send you an invitation. After all, Anna can't just look like she's prioritizing the Rihannas and the Zendayas of the world. She has to look into the smaller schools too. So you already know there are 5 VIPs that automatically get invited, but the top 4 of them get buys. This basically means that they are co-chairs of the Met Gala. They get a special seat at the table. So when the VIPs get their automatic invitations and Anna chooses the other 7 that she wants to invite, the 5 VIPs automatically get invited. The 4 co-chairs get chosen by Anna, and then the rest of them have to play each other in round 1 and fight for their spot to stay. Seeds 5 through 8 get to host seeds 9 through 12 for like a little pregame, okay? And because seeds 5 through 8 are better, they get to host the pregame at their campus. The winner gets to move on to round 2, and the loser, well, your season's over. Meanwhile, the co-chairs get to sit at home and sip Gatorade and eat popcorn while they watch everybody else fight it out. The higher seeds get to have the games at their campus because it's home field advantage. Basically, it's their pregame. They get to use their cups, their glasses. They get to go to the bathroom whenever they want. Like, all their fans are there. It's better for them. But when you move on to round 2, okay, the winners from the first round have to play against the co-chairs now. And this is going to happen in random cities. So it's neutral territory. It's fair game. Whoever wins, wins. You win, you move on. You lose, you go home. And these games happen on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And in the semifinals, shit gets real because there's only 4 teams left in 2 games. And the winners of those 2 games get to move on to the Natty, where the winner takes all. The winner of the national championship not only gets bragging rights, but they get a whole lot of money for their school. So there's a lot of pressure to bring home that national championship and be the best team in college football. And with that, okay, here are the 2024 college football playoff rankings. Number 1 is Oregon. Then you got Georgia, Boise State, Arizona State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Tennessee, Indiana, SMU, and Clemson. Notably left off the list is Alabama. Now, let me explain to you why that's such a big deal and so much drama and my thoughts on the whole situation. Alabama not making the college football playoffs isn't shocking, okay? It's a reality check. Alabama is up in arms about them not making the college football playoffs. They are pissed. They are throwing a hissy fit. And the Crimson Tide wants to blame the system. But the truth is, they've got no one to blame but themselves. Let's unpack why Alabama did not deserve to make the playoffs this year. Now, Alabama's record was 9-3. This was their first time failing to hit double-digit wins since 2010, okay? Their record in the SEC, their conference, was 5-3, and they were tied for 4th place in the SEC, which is hardly elite. Let's talk about their losses, because this is why Alabama didn't make the playoffs. Number 1, their loss to Vanderbilt, an unranked team that hasn't had a winning season since 2013, okay? Vanderbilt had no business beating Alabama, so much so that when they did, they tore down their goalposts and carried them all the way to Broadway Street to the bars with them because they were so excited they beat Alabama. Not excited they went to the playoffs, not excited because they're going to win the national championship, just excited they beat Alabama because nobody thought they were going to do it, okay? Then they lost to Tennessee. This is their most forgivable loss, but Tennessee comfortably made the playoffs, as deserved. They lost to Oklahoma 24-3. And they think they deserve to be in the college football playoffs. And here's the thing. Alabama's losses are unforgivable. Let's be real. Vanderbilt's biggest win ever came against Alabama. That's not playoff worthy alone. Okay, but I could understand if they lost to Vanderbilt, had a bad day, and it was just their one loss. But then they had the Oklahoma meltdown. Like, Oklahoma started off the season ranked in the top 20, but crashed, okay? A 24-3 loss to this team is a huge red flag, and you can only blame yourself for that, okay? But then you have the more respectable loss to Tennessee, but like, I can't count that as respectable with the 2 losses in account to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. Like, those are embarrassing. Alabama is throwing a hissy fit, basically saying that, fine, since we didn't make the playoffs, I guess having a strong schedule doesn't mean anything anymore. So we're going to start playing easy teams so that we can make the playoffs like everybody else. Let me tell you something, Alabama. Your problem and the reason you're not in the college football playoffs is not because you had a hard schedule and you lost to hard teams and your life is just so hard. Your problem is the losses you had against teams that weren't hard. Even if you scheduled your easiest possible schedule ever, it would still include Vanderbilt, and then you still would have lost to them. And you still would be out of the 12-team playoff, which, by the way, the whole point of the 12-team playoffs is to include more teams. Like, a big deal and a reason why I love the 12-team playoff is because last year, the Georgia Bulldogs, my Georgia Bulldogs, got left out of the 4-team playoff, which is bullshit. Like, what playoffs only include 4 teams? Like, that's not no damn playoffs. That is the Final Four. Georgia got left out of the 4-team playoff because they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship after not losing a game for damn 2 years. Everybody and their mama knows Georgia deserved to be in the playoffs last year, but the way it worked, listen, They lost when it counted, and so they had to sit at home and watch the playoffs, and it sucks, okay? So they expanded the playoffs to 12 teams so that didn't happen, so that good teams had the opportunity to play, even if they didn't win their conference or even if they had a bad loss and things didn't work out, okay? That's why Georgia's even in it. Georgia had a couple of losses this season, one being to Alabama, okay? We'll get there in a second. But when you lose games that you should be winning, that games that should be easy, games where you were favored to win by 3 touchdowns and lost and didn't even score a touchdown, don't make the damn playoffs. That's how it works. And Alabama crying, being like, we're one of the best teams in college football. We should be included because we're one of the blue bloods of college football. We're stamped our name in the College Football Hall of Fame. We're Alabama, bitch. Well, guess what? You didn't even make it out of 12 teams because you didn't handle business in the regular season. That is nobody's fault. Alabama crying about not making the 12-team playoff and comparing themselves to SMU. Oh, SMU shouldn't have made it. No one wants to watch SMU. They're not one of the college football greats. It sounds a lot like when white folks cry that diversity hires are being included. That's exactly what Alabama sounds like when they're crying about we're one of the best teams, but you didn't perform like one of the best teams. What are we supposed to do with that? When we look at your resume on paper, you're not one of the best teams. So therefore you didn't get included and SMU did. Sorry. Should have beat Vanderbilt. You can't justify bad losses with a tough schedule because your tough schedule isn't even what worked against you. It's the fact that you lost when you should have won. And let's talk about this, since everybody wants to put Georgia's name up in the mix as a Georgia fan. Yes, Alabama beat Georgia. Yes, Georgia is number 2. Yes, Georgia was the SEC champion. So yeah, you could say, well, we beat Georgia. We should be included. As a Georgia fan, Alabama is Georgia's kryptonite, okay? Beating Georgia when you're Alabama is kind of just like, I mean, okay, girl, cool. I mean, if you didn't lose to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, it'd be like, okay, you beat Georgia, like, that's really good. But you didn't take care of business elsewhere. That's the problem. And let's talk about Georgia's resume for a second and why I think Georgia are the kings of college football right now, especially if we win the national championship this year. In 2021, Georgia was 14-1, with their only loss coming to who? Alabama. In 2022, Georgia was 15-0, no losses. In 2023, Georgia was 13-1, with one loss coming to Alabama in the SEC championship. Georgia didn't lose a game for nearly 2 years and lost a game to Alabama and were knocked out of the college football playoffs, okay? Life ain't fair. I wasn't crying about it because we lost when it mattered. But Alabama beating Georgia isn't really a stamp on their record because Georgia has been great for the last 4 years, and they have I, as a Georgia fan, have only watched Georgia lose to Alabama. Yes, we had our loss to Ole Miss, but I'll give you your one loss to Vanderbilt, okay? But we didn't have a second one. We lost to Alabama, which, as y'all say, is a very good team, okay? In a very close game that Georgia really should have won. Like, we came back on y'all's asses and could have won that game. It was very close, neck and neck. So if you're looking at head-to-head results, Georgia could have won that game. Georgia looked like a good team in that game and came back when it mattered, okay? Y'all had us in the first half, and then we came back when it mattered. So Georgia beating Alabama to me isn't really like a strong stamp on their record. It's not like, oh my God, Alabama beat Georgia, like they deserve to be in the college football playoffs. No. Because Georgia's been great for 4 years, and the only time I see Georgia lose is when they face Alabama. So I, as a Georgia fan, can tip my hat and admit Alabama might be our daddy. Listen, I mean, we have beaten Alabama when it mattered, national championship, but we do seem to have a little trouble every time Alabama comes across the field with us. So I'll give y'all that. But you can't beat Georgia and then go lose to shitty teams. I'm sorry, shitty is mean. Lose to mediocre teams and then cry because you didn't make the playoffs. A 9-3 SEC team doesn't deserve to make the playoffs just because they're in the SEC, baby. It don't work like that. And y'all sound like white folks crying because, old supremacy isn't around anymore. Let it go. You didn't make it. Do better next year. Sorry. Of Georgia's 4 losses over the last 4 seasons, 3 of those were Alabama. Clearly, Georgia got an Alabama problem. So beating Georgia ain't good enough. Whew. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, let's move on to some NBA news. Okay, so NBA, let's talk about the Washington Wizards, who were losing big in November. They had a no-win November, didn't win a single game, not nothing. Okay? And that's for a lot of reasons, because they have bad leadership, and I spoke about this on my TikTok, so I'll play you guys the clip of what I had to say about their losing streak so you can know just how bad it really was. So for starters, this is Kyle Kuzma. He's the star of the Washington Wizards, and he's dating Winnie Harlow, baddie, supermodel. He's leading the Washington Wizards with Jordan Poole, who used to be known as the guy who went crazy when there were baddies courtside. And the girls loved him, but things have taken a turn for the worst. So just last year, when the Pistons went all of November without winning a single basketball game, Kyle Kuzma said, at this point, it's like, don't be that team that loses to the Pistons. Well, now the Wizards have had a no-win November. Yes, they have lost 14 basketball games in a row. They're literally making history for being terrible. It gets worse. They have lost all of those games by at least 9 points. And in 10 of those games, they were blown out by 15 points. So the games aren't even close. They have the worst offense and defense in the whole NBA. So yeah, right now they're clocking in just to lose. So let's talk about the Wizards vibe, because right now their culture is losing. So Bradley Beal used to be the star of the Washington Wizards. Like, he ran shit around there. And he just recently came out on a podcast and said that his rookie year, he came into the Wizards and they kept losing, as they do, and nobody cared. He said his rookie year, he would be nearly in tears because he was so mad about losing a game. And he looked around the locker room and everybody was just like, when's the 1st and the 15th of the month? Like, I'm waiting on my paycheck. I don't care. So if that's the new energy that players are walking into, how are they supposed to win anything ever? Also, it seems like they've got a leadership problem, because Kyle Kuzma is supposed to be the leader of the Washington Wizards, but apparently he's more focused on stats and getting paid than he is on actually winning games, according to his old teammate Spencer Dinwiddie. Kyle Kuzma's got a whole thing going on outside of basketball, okay? Here's him walking the runway. And his old teammate Spencer Dinwiddie said that he's more focused on his brand and getting contracts than he is on winning basketball games. Keep in mind, Spencer Dinwiddie literally used to be in that locker room, and he said for them it's a showcase. They're over there trying to get paid, not trying to play winning basketball. And instead of taking the criticism seriously, Kyle Kuzma just turned it into a joke. The funny thing is, they don't play winning basketball, haha. And then went on to call him Din Shitty. And then there's poor Jordan Poole, because what baddies are going to show up to your game when you're losing 14 in a row? And he's on a 4-year, $128 million deal, which a lot of people are saying is the worst contract in the NBA. He used to be a major piece on a championship team, and then he got punched by one of his teammates, and he was like, I don't want to play with him anymore. So the Warriors sent him to Washington to let his career die. So yeah, it's a sad situation overall, and at this point, it's like, don't be that team that loses to the Wizards. Free Jordan Poole! But despite being so terrible in November, it's a new day in December, because the Wizards finally won a game and they beat the possible NBA MVP to do it. The Wizards finally beat the Denver Nuggets despite Jokic's best efforts, and they beat them 122-113, okay? So like a little bit of a commanding win for the Wizards, who are 3-18. They've only won 3 games this season, y'all. I mean, Denver, embarrassing. They snapped their 16-game losing streak with a 122-113 victory over the Denver Nuggets on December 7th, despite a career-high 56 points from Denver's Nikola Jokic. The Wizards secured the win, led by Jordan Poole's 39 points. I would love to see what baddies were sitting courtside for that one. And it was a career best 9 3-pointers for Jordan Poole. I love to see us back at the pool party, because as you guys know, and as I mentioned, Jordan Poole has had a rough go around after being punched by Draymond Green and sent to Washington for his career to die. I mean, he went from a championship situation to a team that can only win 3 games. Like, that sucks. But it seems like Jordan is really putting up numbers when it counts. You know, when you're in a 16-game losing streak. I guess that's when it counts. I don't know. I'm trying to be positive and nice, y'all. However, the Wizards were unable to maintain this momentum, suffering a 140-112 loss to the Memphis Grizzlies the very next day. That's embarrassing. One thing a lot of people don't know about the NBA is those back-to-backs matter. While the Wizards might have put in their absolute best effort to beat the Denver Nuggets on the 7th, when they got to wake up and play again the very next day, sometimes, you're playing on tired legs, and 140-112, that is not close. Now let's talk about women's sports, because even me as a sports creator, I have looked at my analytics and I have noticed that people have been caring way more about my videos when I'm talking about women's sports than I am about men's sports. And that's not me saying, oh, I only talk about women's sports because I want views. I've been talking about women's sports forever. Calm down. But it is appearing, like it's evident even in my content and in my research, that people are really buying into women's sports. And that is evident because the WNBA has been named the fastest growing brand in 2024. In addition to earning the #1 spot among all US adults, the league also appeared in top 20 lists for 8 out of the 12 key demo groups, including #4 amongst men, #10 amongst boomers, and #4 against financial elites. So people are paying attention to the WNBA and their growth. Now, where did this information come from? A new report from data analytics firm Morning Consult, which tracks how consumers perceive through thousands of brands every single day, reveals that no brand's reputation rose more throughout 2024 than the WNBA's. The WNBA is growing, y'all. You love to see it. Now, to continue with that, 9 out of the top 15 highest paid female athletes in 2024 were women's tennis players. But for the first time ever, a WNBA player appeared on the list of the highest paid female athletes, and that was Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark, the sensational rookie from the Indiana Fever and a highly marketable star from the WNBA, debuted at #10 with $11 million in earnings. This milestone is significant for several reasons. Despite the WNBA's 27-year history, no player before Caitlin Clark has ever made the highest earning female athlete list. And this highlights the league's struggles with salary limitations and their market visibility. But with the WNBA being the fastest growing brand, I think it's important for us to note that we are going to see more WNBA players crack the top 10 of highest earning female athletes in the future. You mark my words right now. Now, it's important to note that endorsements led the way. So with Clark's salary from the WNBA capped at just over $100,000 because of the league rules, her massive endorsement deals are really what put her on the list, featuring Nike, Gatorade, State Farm. That makes up the bulk of her income. Over 98% of her $11.1 million earnings came from endorsements, showcasing how brands are starting to really recognize the commercial profitability of WNBA players. We love to see it. This also is important because of NIL. I mean, we are in the NIL era, and Caitlin Clark's rise to fame came from her college career. And with her being able to profit off of that as a college student, I mean, it's important to note that this puts her foot in the door business-wise. And NIL, there's so many debates surrounding it, and if it's a good thing, if it's a bad thing, if it's making athletes entitled, but I think people are forgetting about women and how NIL allows women to market themselves and to put their foot in the door. I see people all the time talking about Livy Dunn and, being controversial about her. But I will say one thing that's really incredible about Livy Dunn is, I don't know much about gymnastics, but from what I've seen, it doesn't really look like that girl's going to the Olympics anytime soon or anything. I'm sure she's a great gymnast, but I'm just saying that her having social media and being able to use her personality or her beauty or whatever she wants to use to market herself, I think I'm not putting no shade or no hate on that, because that allows her to lace her pockets, okay, to get some money. And I love to see a bad bitch and a female athlete make her money, honey. And so I think that having NIL in college allows women to do that, because I have seen that for some reason, people are so much nicer and so much more warming and welcoming to female athletes when they're in college for some reason. But then as soon as they're a professional athlete, people love women's college basketball. And then as soon as they're WNBA players, people are hating on them and hating on the WNBA. I don't understand that. So them having the ability to start marketing themselves and making money in college is so important for female athletes. And I love it. And, with Clark's rise, partly coming due to the momentum from her college basketball career, where the NIL deals established her before she even joined the NBA, suggest a bridge between NIL and professional earnings. But I do want to highlight the fact that 9 out of the top 15 highest paid female athletes in 2024 were tennis players. That is so crazy. Tennis is really making that money. And one thing I found very interesting is the prize money that these women are making. I mean, for winning, their tennis competitions, I sound like I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but they are making some real money. Whereas WNBA players, from the actual WNBA, they're not really cashing out, but tennis players are cashing out just by being good. I love that. Coco Gauff, who is also the youngest person on the list, topped the list with an estimated $30.4 million in earnings, becoming only the third woman to cross the $30 million mark after Naomi Osaka. As you can see, I have on my Naomi Osaka x Nike collaboration. You feel me? Get into this fit. Hey, it's giving. It's giving. Anyways, after Naomi Osaka and Serena Williams, who are also tennis players and Black queens. Don't you love to see it? Why do you make everything about race? Warriors are so pissed at me right now, but that is a feat in and of itself. So anyways, my daughter will be taking tennis lessons at the ripe age of 2 months because we are building goats and millionaires. You love to see it. Next, we are going to be talking about the WNBA expansion draft. The WNBA is getting bigger and better in 2024, adding a new team, the Golden State Valkyries, and they just had their expansion draft, which is basically the new team getting to select their players. And because they're new to the fold, there is a whole, system as to how they get to choose players, and I'm going to explain that to you. This was the WNBA's first expansion draft since 2008, and they were able to accept one unprotected player from each team. Basically how it works is it's kind of like the Valkyries were inviting their new squad to a party, okay? And all of the OG squads got to protect 7 of their faves. So the Aces are like, listen, you're not touching Asia Wilson. We built our whole future around her. Like, that's just not happening. So they were able to select one from each team of their unprotected players. So everyone else was basically fair game, except for they were only able to select one player from each team because they can't just hoard a bunch of players from one team. Like the Liberty won the championship. They're not about to take half of the Liberty's roster. Like, that's not fair. Okay. So they were able to, divvy around their stealings from team to team. Also, similar to budgeting for a girls' trip, you feel me? The Valkyries had to, budget with who they were choosing. They couldn't just spend all their money on one player, and they still had to save some money for, future signings or leave room for rookies and things like that. One really notable pick was Kate Martin being selected from the Las Vegas Aces because she was such a gem to watch. Like, her relationship with the Aces players, her little Finn, noggin, dude handshake with Asia Wilson, and how they just adopted her, how they would prank her. I remember seeing her like running behind the bus, like they pretended like the bus left her. Like, it was hilarious. So seeing that relationship come to an end really sucks, but it's nice, I feel like, for any player to get to go to the Valkyries and to start something new. Obviously, like, if each team got to protect 7 players, that probably means that the Valkyries are going to be the greatest this year. I mean, prove me wrong, Valkyries. But it's cool to get to live in San Francisco. I mean, I hope they pay in that money, honey, because San Francisco rent is no joke. No joke. I hope the WNBA is covering them. And if not, they need to be giving them breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the facility. Because are you joking? San Francisco rent prices? Y'all better not be paying them girls those below teacher salaries, okay, to live there. That ain't fair. The way I be getting so sidetracked, I'm so annoying. But yeah, they wanted to balance out, selecting young talent and selecting really good players. They didn't want to spend a lot of money on one player unless they felt like they could really make a difference in this first year. And they're just kind of trying to build. So I love to see it. What's next for the Valkyries? They've got free agency. So starting January 21st, they can sign even more players. Kind of like finding the perfect shoe after Black Friday. You feel me? After the Black Friday sales, you still get to keep shopping, okay? But you might not get that sale. And then the WNBA draft, they have the 5th pick. And so they get to snag a rising star. And then they have some big goals. They're focused on winning a championship in the future. And I think that it's cool to get to go to a new team and get to be the first people to do that for a city, especially somewhere like Golden State that has championship pedigree, honey. Now let's talk baseball. I don't usually talk about baseball because, I don't know too much about it. It's not the sport that I'm the most educated about. But when I say money talks, money talks. What happened? Baseball superstar Juan Soto signed a massive $765 million deal with the New York Mets. 15 years, $765 million. Now, this is the largest contract in sports history, bigger than Shohei Ohtani, Lionel Messi, or even your favorite Kardashians brand deals, honey. This is a new thing I would like to call GWE, generational wealth energy. It is much more important and impactful than BDE. This is what you should be looking for ladies. Now, how big is this deal? $765 million. That's like winning the lottery twice. $51 million a year for the next 15 years. He will make more money for the next 15 years than some small country's entire GDP. It's like getting to live in your dream home for the next 15 years, okay? And you're getting paid $51 million to do it. That's crazy. He will be making $139,726 a day. Let me repeat that for dramatic effect, force. He'll be making $139,726 a day. Juan wakes up richer every single day than most people will ever make in a whole year. That shit is crazy. Now, who is he? At 25 years old, he is already one of the best baseball players in the world. And yes, he is only 25. That makes this that much more crazy. And I mean, he hits home runs like they're going out of style. He has an on-base percentage that makes pitchers cry. Basically, he's like that guy, okay? Mets are in their bag, making moves to win championships, finally. And a lot of people wanted to see them, play the Yankees last year. They were a super exciting story. And now they have Juan Soto, and fans are really excited. Generational wealth energy. We are taking that with us into 2025, and we are expounding upon it, ladies. Know your worth. Longevity is important. And GWE. Life lessons from baseball. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Moving on to the NFL, so some quick hit tea. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs are still that team despite all of their close wins. The Chiefs just secured their 9th straight AFC West title by edging out the Chargers in a 19-17 victory. Now, it was tight, but Patrick Mahomes and the squad got it done with a clutch field goal. Even though it kissed the crossbar on the way in, that's drama, but make it football. Travis Kelce breaks another record, and I'm not talking about Taylor Swift's tour, honey. Travis Kelce just became the fastest tight end to ever hit 12,000 career receiving yards. He's basically rewriting the NFL's history books, and he's dating the most iconic and richest woman ever. That man is winning in all areas of life. The Giants are still a hot mess. A lot of people were laughing because last week I said they're basically showing up to a party every single week with a broken ankle and a bad outfit, and that's what's happening. The New York Giants lost again, 14-11 to the Saints, and now have dropped 8 straight games. Fans are big mad, so much so that they're flying banners over MetLife Stadium, asking the team's owner to fix this dumpster fire. Yes. The Miami Dolphins are looking electrifying. I like to call them the track stars of the NFL because they're the fastest team in the NFL. And they're a very exciting team to watch right now with Tyreek Hill scoring touchdowns like he's running a relay race, and Tua Tagovailoa throwing dimes, even though, he's had all that head trauma. They're cooking and they're looking like real contenders. The problem is Miami has to play a lot of cold weather teams, and we saw Miami go into Kansas City last year when it was below freezing, and they looked not so good because when you're coming from South Beach weather to Kansas City weather or Buffalo weather, how are you supposed to prepare for that? I mean, I think that the Miami Dolphins should just go ahead and send their team to Antarctica for a little cold weather training camp ahead of the playoffs, or otherwise they're just going to be fucked whenever they get to a place that's colder than Miami, which is everywhere in the country. So good luck to the Miami Dolphins. It seems unfair, that they're just putting in all this work to lose in the playoffs because they can't play in cold weather. And the last thing I'm going to tell you about the NFL is that Josh Allen will be the MVP. I know a lot of my girlies want to see Saquon Barkley win it, but he is not a quarterback, and the Eagles don't have enough of an opportunity for the rest of the season for him to put up the kind of numbers against running defenses to where he can really look like an MVP. And Josh Allen, despite the fact that they lost last week, has been looking like an MVP. But the good news is, statistically, rarely do NFL MVPs ever win the Super Bowl. So think of it this way, Hotties. If your team, doesn't have an MVP on it, you're statistically more likely to win the Super Bowl, which is more important anyways. Especially if you're like Lamar Jackson, he's already won the MVP twice. Add that to the legacy. Now he needs a Super Bowl. So who cares about the MVP award? It's really not that important, okay? And for Josh Allen, if he does win the MVP and a Super Bowl and beats those odds, he's him. He's him. Hotties, now we have to get into some equestrian news. Now, I don't usually dabble in the horse girly efforts, okay? But this shit was so goddamn crazy. I had to kiki about it with somebody. I don't want to pronounce this diva's name wrong, so hold on.
Charlotte Dujardin.
Charlotte Dujardin. Okay, if I pronounce it wrong, blame Google. Don't blame me. Okay, so here's what's tea. Charlotte Dujardin, a British dressage queen, try saying that 10 times fast, like that is a tongue twister, has had multiple gold medals. Like, she is really that girl in the sport, but she just got hit with a 1-year suspension for abusing her horse. Let's talk about it. A video surfaced showing her whipping her horse 24 times during a training session. The equestrian world right now is galloping with drama. A video resurfaced of her whipping her horse 24 times during a training session. Now, what is dressage? Think of it as horse ballet. Precision, grace, and just like overall vibes in the horse girly world. Riders guide their horses through intricate movements, and it's all about finesse. And she was one of the best, okay? Why is she getting suspended? The video in question went viral, showing Dujardin using her whip excessively during a training session. Now, according to the rule book, equestrian sports have strict rules about horse welfare. The 24 strikes crossed the line, leading to her suspension. People are calling it both animal cruelty and bad sportsmanship. Now, this incident has brought back to the forefront the whole conversation about equestrian sports and animal abuse. Like, is equestrian sports like okay for these animals? Like, should these animals be used in this way? Now the chatter has gone so far as to people are questioning if equestrian sports should even be a part of the Olympics to begin with. This obviously was a hit to Dujardin's reputation. She was a role model in the sport, and this whole scandal is a major blow to her legacy. It's like finding out that your favorite influencer has been saying the N-word this whole time. Now, I think the main takeaway from this, I don't know enough about equestrian sports to say that it's like bad for the animals. I mean, my parents tried to put me in equestrian for a little phase when I was younger. It wasn't really for me or for them. They don't really do big animals. But the thing is like, I feel like as long as the animals are being treated well, I don't know. I'm thinking about like my dog. I feel like in some cases it's good for animals to have like jobs, and maybe in some cases that the sport could be good for the animals. But I don't think hitting anyone, anything, any creature, anywhere 24 times in a training session is acceptable in any context, and she should be suspended, and this should have an impact on her legacy. And I'm wondering if this 1-year suspension is in the period of like right now, like 2025, or if this will impact her Olympic career. Like, will she still be able to be in the Olympics in 2028? Because I don't think that she should. But yeah. Also, now that that's come out, are they going to start looking into all the horse girlies and how they're treating their animals? Or is this because this video went viral? Because if you're going to hold her to that standard, I think it's time to look at everybody. Because if she's one of the best in the sports and she's been beating her horse, then it's like, what has everybody else been doing? That's all for today, Hotties. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these, so hopefully you enjoyed it. And follow me on TikTok at Mariah C. Rose Seymour and my Instagram at Hoops for Hotties, just in case we lose the TikTok app. I love you guys so much. Please subscribe to my channel, share with a friend that you want to get into sports, and comment what you would like me to talk about next. Love ya. Mean it.